47 species had answered the call, their representatives gathering in the crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council's newest facility. Each warrior, hunter, and survivor, convinced they would claim the ultimate prize. Alex Rivera adjusted his simple field jacket and watched the spectacle unfold around him with quiet amusement. While towering creatures flexed natural weapons and others demonstrated enhanced abilities, he simply observed and made mental notes about everything he witnessed. The Centaurian delegate stood nearly 3 meters tall, his razor-sharp claws gleaming under the artificial lights as he practiced combat moves that could slice through reinforced metal. Beside him, a representative from the Outer Rim worlds wore armor plating that had evolved naturally into his very skeleton, making him appear like a walking fortress. "Impressive displays," rumbled the telepathic shadow from the void regions, his words appearing directly in everyone's minds rather than being spoken aloud. But raw power alone does not determine the apex predator. Alex nodded slightly at this statement while continuing to study the assembled contestants. He noticed how the Centaurian favored his left side slightly, suggesting an old injury. The armored giant's breathing pattern indicated his heavy protection came at the cost of stamina. The Shadow's telepathic abilities seemed to require intense concentration that left him vulnerable to physical threats. The facility's central chamber buzzed with translation devices working overtime as dozens of different languages and communication methods filled the air. Some species communicated through chemical releases, others used color changes in their skin, and a few relied on complex sound patterns that human ears could barely detect. "The test parameters are simple," announced the Council's Prime Administrator, her voice echoing through speakers positioned throughout the vast space. 30 standard days on Terminus World with minimal equipment and basic survival gear. Murmurs of excitement rippled through the assembly as holographic displays showed images of the designated testing ground. Terminus World appeared as a planet of extremes with scorching deserts, frozen mountain ranges, dense jungles filled with aggressive wildlife, and vast oceans teeming with predators. Each participant will be monitored continuously, but not assisted under any circumstances, the administrator continued. "The winner will be determined not by who survives longest, but by who demonstrates the most effective predatory behavior during the testing period." Most of the alien representatives began immediate discussions about hunting strategies and target selection. The Centaurians debated which large predators would provide the most impressive kills, while the giants calculated how much territory they could claim and defend through sheer force. Alex remained silent during these strategy sessions, instead focusing on the detailed environmental data being displayed. He studied topographical maps, weather patterns, seasonal migrations of various species, and the complex food webs that sustained life on Terminus World. Human representative called out a crystalline being, whose voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Your species seems remarkably unremarkable for this type of competition. No natural weapons, no enhanced senses, no apparent specializations." Several other contestants turned their attention toward Alex, some with curiosity, and others with what appeared to be amusement at the perceived weakness of his species. Their expressions ranged from polite interest to barely concealed contempt. "You raise valid points," Alex replied calmly, his hands clasped behind his back in a relaxed posture. "Humans indeed lack the obvious advantages displayed by our fellow competitors here." The Centaurian let out what might have been laughter, a harsh clicking sound that echoed off the chamber walls. "Perhaps your species misunderstood the nature of this competition. This is not a test of intelligence or technology, but of pure, predatory instinct." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Alex said with a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "In fact, I think this competition is exactly what my species was designed for, though perhaps not in the way most expect." Before anyone could question this cryptic statement further, the administrator called for final preparations to begin. Participants were directed to equipment stations where they would receive their standardized survival gear. Each contestant received identical supplies: a basic shelter tarp, a multi-tool with cutting implements, fire-starting materials, water, purification tablets, a first aid kit, and enough emergency rations for 3 days. Beyond these items, Everything else would need to be acquired or created on Terminus World itself. Alex examined his gear with the practiced eye of someone who had spent years teaching others how to survive in hostile environments. He tested the HFY multi-tools edge, checked the tarp's waterproofing, and mentally cataloged the various uses each item could serve beyond its intended purpose. Around him, other contestants were making similar inspections, though many seemed dismissive of the simple equipment. Several muttered complaints about the limitations placed on their natural advantages by the standardized gear requirements. Transportation to Terminus World begins in 6 standard hours, announced the administrator. Participants are advised to rest and prepare mentally for the challenges ahead. As the assembly began to disperse, Alex noticed several contestants forming small groups to share information and discuss potential alliances. The practice seemed natural for species that had evolved social hunting behaviors. However, he also observed that most of the truly formidable-looking contestants remained isolated, clearly intending to rely solely on individual abilities. Their confidence in personal superiority was evident in their dismissive attitudes toward collaboration. Alex found a quiet corner of the facility where he could review the environmental data one more time. While others rested or continued strategizing about combat techniques, he committed every detail of Terminus World's ecosystem to memory. The planet's day-night cycle lasted 26 standard hours, with temperature variations that would challenge any species not specifically adapted to extreme conditions. Seasonal patterns showed that the testing period would coincide with the beginning of the world's harsh winter season. Most interesting to Alex were the migration patterns of various prey species. Large herbivores moved in predictable cycles between feeding grounds, while smaller creatures followed complex patterns based on resource availability and predator pressure. He also noted the territorial behaviors of Terminus World's apex predators, massive creatures that claimed enormous ranges and defended them aggressively against any perceived threats. Most contestants would likely view these beasts as the ultimate hunting challenges. As the final hours before departure ticked away, Alex made one last observation that brought a quiet chuckle to his lips. While every other species had sent their most physically impressive representative, humans had chosen someone who specialized in teaching others how to survive. When departure time arrived and the contestants were loaded into transport vessels, Alex settled into his assigned seat with calm confidence. As the ship prepared for the journey to Terminus World, he leaned back and quietly murmured the words that would define the coming challenge. "I'm the Predator." The drop pod screamed through Terminus World's atmosphere like falling stars, each carrying a single contestant to randomly selected coordinates across the planet's hostile surface. Alex felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as his pod's heat shields glowed red-hot during atmospheric entry. His landing zone turned out to be a dense forest bordering a river system, with steep hills rising to the east and what appeared to be grasslands stretching toward the western horizon. The pod's hatch hissed open, releasing him into air that smelled of damp earth, growing vegetation, and something else that made his survival instincts sharpen immediately, while other contestants began their expected behaviors within hours of landing. Alex spent his first day doing something that would have seemed wasteful to most observers. He sat perfectly still in various locations, simply watching and listening to the environment around him. Through his earpiece, he could hear scattered reports from the monitoring stations tracking all participants. The Centaurian had already engaged and killed a pack of wolf-like predators in spectacular fashion, while the armored giant had claimed a cave system and begun fortifying it against potential threats. The Shadow had made contact with several local species and was attempting to establish telepathic control over them, with mixed results that suggested the planet's wildlife had some resistance to mental manipulation. Other contestants were following similarly predictable patterns based on their species' natural hunting methods. Alex ignored the competitive updates and focused entirely on understanding the ecosystem he had been placed within. By evening of his first day, he had identified 17 different animal species, mapped the local water sources, and located several potential shelter sites that would provide both protection and strategic advantages. His second day began before dawn with a careful exploration of the river system. Rather than looking for prey to hunt, he studied the tracks and signs left by various creatures that came to drink. The information painted a detailed picture of local animal behaviors, feeding schedules, and territorial boundaries. While tracking a group of deer-like herbivores, Alex discovered something that made him smile with quiet satisfaction. Their grazing patterns and movement routes were being influenced by pressure from a large predator that he hadn't yet observed directly. Instead of seeking out this predator for a confrontation, Alex began mapping its territory and hunting patterns. Through the evidence it left behind, SCAD analysis revealed its diet, territorial markings showed the boundaries of its range, and kill sites indicated its preferred hunting methods. By his third day, Alex had constructed his first trap, not the simple snares that might catch small game for food, but an elaborate system that would allow him to monitor and influence the movement of larger animals through the area. The trap consisted of carefully placed scent markers, strategically cleared pathways, and subtle modifications to the natural environment that would encourage animals to move in predictable patterns. To casual observation, it appeared to be nothing more than a slightly worn animal trail. Other contestants were achieving impressive individual kills during the same period. The monitoring stations reported spectacular battles between alien warriors and Terminus World's most dangerous predators. With several contestants proving their combat prowess through direct confrontation, Alex avoided direct confrontation entirely, instead focusing on gathering intelligence about every aspect of his environment. He learned which plants were edible, where different species sought shelter during storms, and how the area's food web connected various predators and prey. His approach began paying unexpected dividends when a territorial dispute between two large predators drove a herd of herbivores directly through his modified trail system. Instead of hunting the animals, Alex followed them and observed how his environmental changes influenced their behavior. The herd moved exactly where his subtle modifications encouraged them to go, clustering in areas where he had strategically placed scent markers and avoiding regions where he had created minor obstacles. His ability to predict and control their movement was becoming remarkably precise. During his first week, while other contestants focused on proving their individual hunting prowess, Alex had essentially begun farming the local ecosystem. He was managing animal movement patterns, influencing predator territories, and creating conditions that would allow him to control resource distribution across a significant area. The monitoring stations began noting unusual patterns in the data from Alex's region. Wildlife activity was increasing rather than decreasing, despite the presence of a human contestant who should have been disrupting local animal behavior through hunting activities. What the monitors couldn't see was that Alex was actually improving the local ecosystem's efficiency. His subtle modifications were reducing competition between species, creating better access to water sources, and establishing more secure feeding areas for herbivores. These improvements had the side effect of attracting more predators to his region. But rather than viewing this as a problem, Alex incorporated these new arrivals into his expanding understanding of the area's predatory relationships. By the end of his first week, Alex had achieved something no other contestant had managed. Instead of claiming territory through force or establishing dominance through combat, he had made himself an integral part of the local ecosystem. His presence was actually benefiting most of the area's wildlife, while simultaneously giving him unprecedented knowledge about and influence over every creature within a considerable radius of his base camp. The other contestants remained focused on traditional hunting approaches, seeking impressive prey and accumulating kill counts that would demonstrate their predatory superiority. They were playing the game they expected to win. Alex was playing a completely different game, one that his observers were only beginning to recognize. While others hunted individual animals, he was learning to hunt entire ecosystems. When the second week began, Alex started implementing the next phase of his strategy. Rather than simply observing and understanding his environment, he began actively reshaping it to serve his purposes. His modifications remained subtle and appeared natural, but their cumulative effect was transforming the region around his base camp into something unprecedented, an ecosystem optimized not for natural balance but for human control. The real test would come when other contestants began entering his territory, drawn by the unusual concentration of wildlife that his management techniques were producing. Then, they would discover what it truly meant to face a predator, who viewed the entire world as his hunting ground. 14 days into the competition, the monitoring stations detected something unprecedented in the data streams flowing back from Terminus World. While most contestants showed declining efficiency due to injuries, equipment failures, and resource depletion, the humans region was experiencing an ecological boom. 3 contestants had already been eliminated from the competition, one due to infection from improperly treated wounds, another from dehydration after failing to locate reliable water sources, and the third from a territorial dispute with a massive apex predator that ended badly. The remaining participants were beginning to show signs of the prolonged stress that came with survival in such a hostile environment. Even the most physically impressive contestants were making tactical errors, taking unnecessary risks, and showing decreased performance in their hunting activities. Alex, however, appeared to be thriving in ways that confused the Galactic Council observers. His biometric readings showed optimal health. His region had become a wildlife sanctuary that attracted animals from vast distances, and his tracking device indicated he was ranging across territory that would have challenged entire hunting parties. What the monitors didn't realize was that Alex had spent the past 2 weeks essentially domesticating his entire environment, not in the traditional sense of taming individual animals, but in creating conditions where the ecosystem itself served his purposes. His network of subtle environmental modifications had grown to encompass nearly 50 square kilometers of terrain. Strategic placement of scent markers guided animal movement. Carefully managed water sources controlled access to vital resources, and modified vegetation created natural funnels that directed wildlife along predictable routes. The breakthrough moment came when 2 remaining contestants, a centaurian and an armored giant, found themselves cornered by one of Terminus World's most dangerous predators. A creature resembling a massive bear with metallic claws and natural armor plating. Beast had trapped them in a canyon with no apparent escape route, and both aliens were preparing for what would likely be a fatal confrontation. Their weapons and natural abilities were impressive, but this predator had evolved specifically to dominate other apex predators. Alex observed the situation from a ridge nearly 2 kilometers away, watching through field glasses he had constructed from salvaged materials and natural lenses. He could have simply allowed nature to take its course and eliminate 2 competitors. Instead, he implemented a solution that demonstrated the true scope of his environmental control. Using a combination of controlled burns, strategically placed sound makers, and carefully positioned scent lures, Alex began manipulating the massive predator's behavior. The beast, following instincts that had served its species for millions of years, responded to Alex's environmental cues exactly as predicted. The controlled burns created smoke patterns that triggered its territorial responses, while specific scents led it toward what appeared to be a more attractive hunting ground. Within 30 minutes, the predator had abandoned its original prey and was following Alex's carefully laid trail toward a prepared location where he had constructed an elaborate capture system. The system used the creature's own size and aggressive behavior against it. The trap itself was a masterpiece of engineering, using only natural materials, fallen logs positioned to create a funnel, carefully weakened ground that would collapse under the creature's weight, and a containment area that would hold the beast securely without causing permanent harm. Alex's successful capture of the massive predator achieved several objectives simultaneously. It eliminated a major threat to other contestants, demonstrated his ability to control even the most dangerous wildlife, and provided him with leverage over the entire local ecosystem. The Centaurian and Giant, unaware that their rescue had been orchestrated by the human they had dismissed as unremarkable, attributed their survival to fortunate timing and continued with their individual hunting strategies. Meanwhile, the monitoring stations were beginning to piece together the true scope of what Alex had accomplished. Analysis of wildlife movement patterns showed that he had essentially created a managed ecosystem where every major species followed predictable behaviors. His influence extended far beyond his immediate vicinity, with changes in animal behavior being detected across hundreds of kilometers of terrain. Water sources he had modified were attracting wildlife from distant regions, while his scent management techniques were redirecting migration patterns. The council observers realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Rather than proving his dominance through combat or territorial control, The human was demonstrating mastery over the fundamental systems that controlled all life on the planet. Dr. Renna, the Council's chief xenobiologist, made a disturbing discovery while reviewing the accumulated data. Alex's modifications to the local ecosystem were not random or instinctive, but followed sophisticated principles of ecological management that suggested deep understanding of planetary-scale biological systems. "He's not hunting animals," she reported to her colleagues. "He's hunting the entire biosphere itself." This revelation prompted a comprehensive review of all human activities during the competition. The analysis revealed that Alex had been implementing techniques that would have required teams of specialists and advanced equipment for most other species to attempt. His ability to read environmental cues, predict animal behavior, and implement changes that would cascade through entire ecological networks represented a level of predatory sophistication that none of the Council observers had anticipated. The other contestants remained unaware of the human's true activities, continuing to focus on individual hunting achievements and territorial disputes. Their traditional approaches to predatory behavior were yielding impressive short-term results, but missed the larger picture entirely. Alex's region had become a carefully orchestrated ecosystem, where he could predict and control the behavior of every major species. He knew where specific animals would be at any given time, what resources they would need, and how they would respond to various environmental stimuli. As the third week approached, several developments suggested that the competition was entering a new phase. Resources in other regions were becoming scarce due to overhunting, while Alex's territory continued to flourish with abundant wildlife. The contrast was becoming impossible to ignore. While other contestants struggled with declining conditions and increasing desperation, the human appeared to have created an environment of sustainable abundance. More importantly, Alex had positioned himself to control not just his own survival, but the survival of every other remaining contestant. His environmental modifications now influenced conditions across the majority of the testing area. The Council observers faced an uncomfortable realization. They had designed a test to identify the ultimate apex predator, but the human was demonstrating forms of predatory behavior that their evaluation criteria had never anticipated. Alex's success wasn't based on individual combat prowess or natural weapons, but on his species' unique evolution as persistence predators who specialized in reshaping their environment to serve their hunting needs. The final week began with a revelation that sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council's observation teams. Detailed analysis of the tracking data revealed that Alex hadn't simply been managing his environment. He had been subtly hunting every remaining contestant for the past 2 weeks. Dr. Renna's team discovered the truth while mapping contestant movement patterns against environmental changes in Alex's territory. Every time another participant entered his region, their behavior became predictable and their options became limited, though they remained completely unaware of the manipulation. The Centaurian, who prided himself on his natural hunting instincts, had been following game trails that Alex had artificially enhanced to guide him away from the most dangerous areas, while simultaneously leading him toward resources that would keep him healthy and competitive. The armored giant, convinced he was making tactical decisions based on terrain analysis, was actually following a path that Alex had carefully constructed, using subtle modifications to natural barriers, water availability, and shelter options. Even the telepathic shadow, despite his mental abilities, had fallen under Alex's influence. The human had learned to manipulate the emotional states of local wildlife in ways that created telepathic noise that masked his own activities while subtly influencing the shadow's decision-making processes. "He's been hurting them," Dr. Renna reported to the Council with a mixture of admiration and unease. "Every remaining contestant has been moving according to patterns that serve the human's strategic objectives, and none of them realize it." The monitoring team reviewed surveillance footage from the past week and discovered evidence of Alex's true capabilities. He had been present at or near every major incident involving other contestants, always positioned where he could observe their responses and capabilities. When the Centaurian had engaged in combat with a pack of aggressive predators, Alex had been watching from concealment, studying combat techniques and identifying weaknesses in both the alien's fighting style and his recovery patterns afterward. During the giant's territorial disputes with other large predators, Alex had positioned himself to observe the entire confrontation, gathering intelligence about armor vulnerabilities and stamina limitations that could be exploited if necessary. Most disturbing to the observers was the realization that Alex had been in position to eliminate any of the other contestants at multiple points during the competition, but had consistently chosen to help them survive instead. The evidence was undeniable when examined carefully. The Centaurians' access to clean water had been maintained by Alex's modifications to local streams. The giant's shelter had been reinforced by strategic placement of fallen timber that appeared natural but followed engineering principles, and the Shadow's food sources had been supplemented by Alex's management of small game populations. He could have ended this competition days ago, admitted Council Administrator Vale during an emergency session. The human has demonstrated complete dominance over the testing environment and every participant within it. The true scope of Alex's predatory strategy became clear when the team analyzed his daily movement patterns. He had been conducting systematic reconnaissance of every contestant, mapping their habits, identifying their psychological profiles, and developing detailed contingency plans for various scenarios. His tracking device data showed that he regularly positioned himself within striking distance of other participants, sometimes for hours at a time, while they remained completely unaware of his presence. He was hunting them in the most fundamental sense, gathering intelligence and maintaining tactical superiority. The psychological profiles Alex had developed of his fellow contestants were remarkably accurate. He had correctly predicted their responses to various stimuli, anticipated their strategic decisions, and manipulated their environment in ways that reinforced their existing behavioral patterns. Dr. Renna made another disturbing discovery while reviewing Alex's resource utilization data. He had been consuming fewer calories than any other contestant while maintaining optimal physical condition, suggesting he had achieved perfect efficiency in his environmental exploitation. His survival techniques are operating at a level we didn't think was possible without technological assistance, she reported. He's effectively become part of the ecosystem itself. The monitoring team realized that Alex's approach represented a completely different evolutionary strategy than anything they had encountered. While other species had evolved specialized predatory traits, humans had evolved the ability to reshape any environment to match their predatory needs. On the 22nd day of competition, Alex made his first direct contact with another contestant in over a week. He approached the Shadow's location with his hands visible and no apparent weapons, demonstrating either supreme confidence or complete tactical superiority. "I've been watching your progress," Alex said calmly as the telepathic being turned to face him. "You've adapted to this environment better than most, but you're making some assumptions that could become problematic." The Shadow attempted to probe Alex's mind telepathically, but found only carefully organized thoughts that revealed nothing, sensitive while providing exactly the information Alex wanted to share. "Your mental abilities are impressive," Alex continued, "but they rely on emotional resonance with your targets, and you've been operating in an environment where I control the emotional states of most wildlife." The revelation that Alex had been manipulating the telepathic environment sent a chill through the Shadow's consciousness. He realized that his presumed advantage had actually made him more vulnerable to the human's systematic approach. "What do you want?" the Shadow asked, abandoning his attempt at mental dominance. "To make you an IT offer," Alex replied. "I could eliminate you at any time, but I think this competition is more interesting with worthy opponents. I propose we make the final phase more challenging for both of us." The offer confused the monitoring teams until they realized its true purpose. Alex was essentially revealing his capabilities to demonstrate that he had been choosing not to win, making the competition serve his purposes rather than simply dominating it. During the final days of the testing period, Alex began systematically revealing his influence to each remaining contestant. The demonstration served multiple purposes, proving his dominance while also educating the observers about human predatory capabilities. The Centaurian learned that his most successful hunts had been orchestrated by Alex's environmental management. The giant discovered that his territorial control had been an illusion maintained by the human's resource manipulation, and the shadow realized that his telepathic abilities had been compromised from the beginning, rather than elimination or confrontation. These revelations led to a fundamental shift in how the other contestants viewed the competition. They began to understand that they hadn't been competing against each other, but had all been part of an extended demonstration of human predatory superiority. The designated meeting point on day 30 was a natural amphitheater formed by weathered stone formations, chosen by the Council for its symbolic significance as a neutral ground where the competition would reach its conclusion. Alex arrived first, despite being farthest from the location when the final gathering was announced. He appeared relaxed and well-rested, showing none of the wear that 30 days of survival competition should have produced on any participant. The other contestants approached the meeting site with varying degrees of caution and curiosity. Each had experienced Alex's revelations about his environmental control during the final week, fundamentally changing their understanding of the competition they thought they had been participating in. The Centaurian entered the amphitheater with his natural weapons visible but not raised, his posture suggesting wariness rather than aggression. Behind him came the armored giant, whose heavy footsteps echoed off the stone walls as he took position at a respectful distance from the human. The shadow materialized from what had appeared to be empty air, his telepathic abilities allowing him to approach without detection by conventional senses. His presence in the amphitheater added an element of otherworldly mystery to the gathering. "Before the council renders its judgment," Alex said, addressing both his fellow contestants and the monitoring devices that surrounded the area, "I think it's important to clarify what we've actually been demonstrating here." He gestured toward the landscape around them, which showed clear signs of the environmental modifications he had implemented throughout the testing period. Water flowed more efficiently through carved channels, vegetation grew in patterns that supported diverse wildlife, and animal paths followed routes that maximized ecosystem efficiency. "Each of your species evolved remarkable predatory capabilities," Alex continued. "Speed, strength, mental abilities, natural weapons, defensive adaptations. These traits made you apex predators in your respective environments." The Centaurian's claws extended slightly as Alex spoke, but there was no hostility in the gesture. It seemed more like an acknowledgement of the accuracy of the human's assessment. "But humans evolved differently," Alex explained. "We became predators of adaptation itself. We don't just hunt in environments. We reshape environments to optimize them for our hunting strategies." He walked to the center of the amphitheater, his movements casual and unthreatening, despite the profound implications of his words. "On Earth, our ancestors didn't compete with other predators by developing better claws or stronger jaws. Instead, we learned to turn entire ecosystems into hunting tools that served our purposes." The monitoring devices recorded every word, as Alex continued his explanation, providing the Galactic Council with insights into human predatory evolution that their xenobiological studies had never anticipated. "We persistence hunt not just individual animals, but entire planetary biospheres. We pursue our prey across geological timescales, reshaping landscapes and climate patterns until everything serves our reproductive and survival needs." Dr. Renna, monitoring from the council facility, felt a chill as she realized the full implications of Alex's statement. Humans weren't just successful predators, they were predators who had learned to remake worlds. "Every modification I made to this environment during the past month represents techniques my species has been developing for tens of thousands of years," Alex explained to his audience. "Agriculture, animal husbandry, water management, ecological engineering. These are all predatory technologies." The shadow attempted once more to probe Alex's mind, seeking to understand the full scope of human capabilities, but found only organized thoughts that revealed layer upon layer of strategic planning, extending far beyond the current competition. "The most dangerous thing about human predation," Alex said, seeming to sense the telepathic probe, "is that we learn to cooperate while hunting. We pack hunt on a planetary scale, with billions of individuals coordinating their efforts across centuries. This revelation prompted immediate discussion among the council observers. If humans could coordinate predatory behavior across their entire species and maintain those strategies across multiple generations, they represented a form of apex predation that exceeded anything in known galactic history. But cooperation is just the foundation, Alex continued. What makes humans truly unique is that we've learned to hunt ideas, concepts, and possibilities. We don't just reshape physical environments, we reshape the very parameters of existence. He gestured toward the monitoring devices surrounding the amphitheater. This competition was designed to test predatory behavior according to your species' understanding of what predation means. But we've been hunting the concept of the test itself. The council administrators realized they were facing a paradigm shift in their understanding of predatory evolution. Alex's performance had demonstrated capabilities that their evaluation criteria couldn't measure because they hadn't imagined such capabilities were possible. The verdict is unanimous, came the announcement from Council Administrator Vale. While impressive predatory traits have been demonstrated by all participants, only one contestant has shown the ability to hunt and control entire ecosystems. Alex nodded acknowledgement of the decision but raised his hand to address the council directly. With respect, I decline any leadership positions or formal recognition. This demonstration was educational rather than competitive. The unexpected refusal surprised the council observers. Most species competed aggressively for recognition and status within the galactic community. My species doesn't need your validation of our predatory capabilities, Alex explained. We're already apex predators of everything we encounter. We hunt planets, star systems, and eventually galaxies themselves. He turned toward the other contestants, his expression serious but not threatening. The real question isn't whether humans are apex predators, but whether the galaxy is ready to coexist with a species that views entire civilizations as part of the ecosystem we manage. The implications sent shockwaves through the monitoring teams. If Alex was accurately representing human capabilities and intentions, then first contact with humanity represented challenges that no galactic policies had anticipated. However, Alex added with a slight smile, we're also persistence predators, of friendship and cooperation. We hunt allies with the same dedication we apply to prey, and we've found that cooperative relationships usually produce better outcomes for everyone involved. As the formal competition concluded, Alex gathered his minimal equipment and prepared for extraction to the council facility. The other contestants watched his departure with newfound respect and perhaps a touch of unease. The final transmission from Terminus World showed Alex teaching basic ecosystem management techniques to the remaining contestants, sharing knowledge that would help them survive more efficiently in hostile environments. Even in victory, he was demonstrating the human tendency to convert potential enemies into cooperative partners. 3 months later, the Galactic Council established the first Interspecies Ecological Management Program, with human advisors helping other civilizations optimize their planetary resources. Alex's prediction about humans hunting cooperation had proven accurate. The apex predator competition was never held again. Instead, it evolved into a collaborative survival training program where species learned from each other's evolved capabilities while benefiting from human environmental management expertise. Alex returned to Earth and resumed teaching wilderness survival to children. But now his classes included students from 17 different species. His lesson plan had expanded to cover not just survival techniques, but the philosophical implications of seeing entire worlds as gardens to be tended, rather than resources to be consumed.